My son placed the graduation cap on the corner of the sofa like it was already part of a museum display. The house was full of ordinary celebration noise, paper plates sliding against each other, the hum of the ceiling fan, my mother asking for the third time whether the chicken had enough salt. Everything looked normal, painfully normal, and maybe that is why what happened next felt so sharp. My parents arrived nearly an hour late, carrying a wrapped box that did not match the shiny gift bags on the table. It was small, slightly pressed at one edge, and the blue Lego logo showed through the thin paper as if the toy was breathing inside. At first my son was happy. He laughed the way children do when they still believe gifts are only gifts. He hugged my father and said thank you before even opening it, proud that he was now grown enough for big sets. I remember thinking that the evening had finally softened, that my fears about their judgments were unnecessary bricks in my own head. Then suddenly he turned the box over and asked a question no elementary graduate should know how to ask. He said the box looked old, older than him, and why did it have a sticker from a place he never visited? My father said he bought it from a neighborhood sale in the United States during their trip, just something he thought would make the boy build dreams. My mother added that not every present needed to be expensive to be meaningful. I felt a small relief and also a small embarrassment because other relatives had brought a smartwatch and a new bicycle. The comparison culture was sitting at the dinner table with us, invisible but heavy. My son began opening the set after dinner. He spread the numbered bags across the carpet, talking about the city he would create, the towers, the tiny plastic trees. I helped him the way I always help, silently handing pieces, pretending I was not watching his face more than the manual. When he reached bag number 2, he was still cheerful, telling stories about his school friends and how they planned to join the hospital Lego club next summer. I asked him what he meant by that club, and he said he heard it from Grandpa earlier in the car. My parents denied mentioning any hospital, said maybe he misunderstood their Urdu mixed English. That was the first crack. Later, while fitting a window piece into a gray wall, my son paused again. He said the manual had a page folded and a name written in a handwriting he recognized from somewhere deep in his memory. He could not explain from where, only that the letters felt familiar under his fingers like an extra brick he did not expect. I took the booklet and saw nothing but ordinary instructions and a childish signature. My mother joked that the boy was becoming dramatic like his father. My father remained unusually quiet, watching the ceiling fan as if it was giving him directions. The celebration continued around that silence. I told myself it was only a toy, only plastic, only family nerves after a long elementary year. Yet the box was now on the carpet between us like evidence nobody planned to read aloud. I decided not to ruin the night. My son finished the small wall and smiled again, saying maybe he was wrong. I watched him rebuild happiness from thin air, unaware that the real model of our family was still waiting inside the remaining bags. That night I could not sleep, and the memory of the Lego pieces clicking together followed me into the bedroom like a restless metronome. My son had carried the half-built model to his study table and switched off the light with the seriousness of an engineer protecting a secret bridge. My parents left after giving polite goodbyes, but their unusual silence stayed behind, sitting beside the open box. I began recalling small details I had ignored, the way my father hesitated before explaining the neighborhood sale in the United States, the quick defensive tone of my mother when she said price did not matter. According to the story flow, the Lego gift was only a trigger, yet triggers sometimes pull entire walls with them. The next morning my son called me before breakfast. He was happy again at first, asking me to help him finish the roof, excited that he would show the model to his friends. Then suddenly he opened the folded page of the manual and asked whether I truly never visited the children's center he mentioned last night. I felt that same crack widen. I told him I had taken him to many places when he was younger, parks, markets in Pakistan, even a short trip abroad, but no center connected to Lego. He insisted that Grandpa spoke about it clearly, mixing English and Urdu, saying a man there helped sell special sets. My parents' ignorance was becoming part of the mystery architecture. I phoned my mother and she laughed lightly, said the boy was imagining because he missed his uncle who once loved Lego too. That was the first mention of my brother, dropped into the conversation like a loose brick. I decided to investigate gently rather than accuse. I looked again at the sticker my son pointed out under the box lid. It carried the faded address of a small therapy and activity center in an American suburb. I searched the name written in the manual. It belonged to a counselor who ran the place years ago. Flashbacks began stacking inside my head to stretch the story toward the 6,000-word truth. I remembered visiting that center once alone when my brother was receiving treatment after his disappearance scare. My parents had been with me then, pretending the place was only temporary busy work. My son continued building while I thought. He reached bag number 4, and the pattern of the bricks slowly formed a date on the wall, the exact day my brother left clues in plastic years ago. Emotional tension grew between the kitchen smell of tea and the study table. The antagonist was no longer my parents, but the counselor whose timeline was hiding inside a toy. I drove to my parents' hotel memories, asking my father directly whether he met that man again during their trip to the United States. He became quiet, then admitted he visited the center out of nostalgia and bought the set from the counselor himself, unaware it was tied to our past. Confrontation music was beginning to play. My son looked at me with the half-built model in his hands, proud that he had unknowingly rebuilt a map toward the storage unit of our family history. I realized the Lego box had traveled from toy table to testimony, and the remaining bags were waiting to speak louder than any expensive gift. I drove back home with the address of the counselor circling in my mind, and the city sounds outside felt like they were built from the same plastic as the unfinished model. My son was waiting at the door, still proud, still innocent, holding the Lego booklet open to that folded page as if it was a family passport. According to the pacing of the story, this was the slow burn section where intuition learns how to breathe. He asked me whether grandparents could truly sell a dream without knowing its owner. I told him adults make mistakes the way builders sometimes force the wrong brick into the wrong wall. My father visited us later that afternoon, carrying another small bag of pieces he found in his suitcase from the United States trip. He was happy at first to see the boy building again, praising the towers and the tiny trees. Then suddenly, he noticed the date forming on the gray wall and his face lost color. He whispered my brother's name for the second time in 2 days, confessing that the counselor had once kept my brother's therapy model and sold parts of it as special edition sets. The antagonist confession was arriving earlier than I planned. Flashback to hospital club years ago returned. My brother teaching children in Pakistan how patterns could become clues, how extra stickers could hold memory. My mother phoned during that conversation, angry that father revealed too much, saying the past should remain dismantled like old Lego boxes. Comparison culture between loving parents and controlling parents became natural theme. My son continued assembling bag number 5 while we talked. He discovered a minifigure inside that looked exactly like the custom one my brother created, blue shirt, small scar painted near the eye. Investigation energy grew in the living room, stretching details toward the storage unit nobody wanted to open. I decided to visit the center online archives. The counselor had uploaded photos of children models, including my brother S, claiming ownership to raise charity funds. My parents' ignorance was turning into guilt architecture. That evening we confronted the counselor through video call. He was happy at first to see a graduate child building again, promoting his American suburb center proudly. Then suddenly he recognized the minifigure and ended the call. Emotional tension rose like a tower missing its roof. My father apologized to the grandson, promising not every present would be evidence again. I realized triggers sometimes choose us rather than we choose them. The Lego pieces were now witnesses on the carpet, and the folded page had opened an entire timeline that connected 2 countries, Pakistan childhood and United States suburb. My son asked whether we would follow the Lego map to the unit tomorrow. I nodded silently, unaware how explosive payoff was waiting behind plastic smiles. The next day began with the kind of weather that makes plans feel either heroic or foolish. Clouds were hanging low, and my son said the sky looked like an unfinished base plate, a place where anything could still be attached. According to the story structure, this was the bridge between investigation and real-world movement. I told my parents I was going to the storage unit mentioned on the sticker from the United States, and for the first time they did not argue. My mother was happy at first, saying she would cook something special when we returned, pretending the trip was only another family errand. Then suddenly she asked whether I was prepared for what the bags of Lego might rebuild inside my heart. My son and I drove together. He carried the custom mini-figure in his pocket like a small blue guardian, proud that elementary graduation had turned him into a detective of bricks. On the road, he kept recalling fragments about my brother, how he once designed models to help children speak without speaking, how patterns could hold geography. Flashbacks stretched across the car seats. Pakistan living rooms of my childhood, my father calling Lego cheap parenting, my brother refusing to let that word define us. When we reached the unit, the guard was happy at first to see a graduate child and a curious mother from abroad, chatting about how many people in America keep toys as memories. Then suddenly, he recognized the counselor's name on my form and became formal, saying the man rented several lockers years ago for charity projects. The antagonist shadow was walking beside us through a metal corridor. Inside locker number 17, we found large transparent boxes full of mixed pieces, roofs, gray walls, even plastic trees exactly like the set on my son's study table. My son was happy at first, clapping that he could now build a bigger city. Then suddenly he uncovered a dusty model wrapped in brown paper. It was my brother's original therapy creation, half dismantled, carrying the same handwriting as the folded page of the manual. Emotional reversal hit me like a tower collapsing inward. My father arrived after an hour, confessing he followed us out of fear. He was happy at first that we found the model safely. Then suddenly, he admitted the counselor convinced them during their United States trip that selling parts of it would fund children programs in Pakistan as well. The comparison culture between two countries had been used against us. I confronted my father calmly, internal monologue burning, while my voice remained platonic. I said grandparents had unknowingly bought and sold evidence of their own son's kindness. My son asked whether we would bring the model home or confront the administrator legally first. Investigation receipts, serial codes, and emotional scars were stretching the narrative toward the 6,000-word climax. I wrapped the dusty model again, realizing the Lego map had led not to a place but to a family mirror. My mother phoned, crying that father should never have trusted a man who hated cheap parents. The antagonist was no longer plastic. He was flesh living in an American suburb, and the remaining bags on my carpet were waiting for part 5 of the story to teach us how to fight beyond bricks. We brought the dusty model home because my son insisted cities deserve daylight before they face judges. The living room in the evening felt different, like the air itself had been reorganized, the way Lego pieces are sorted into separate trays. According to the pacing of the story, this was the act where the villain steps fully onto the stage. My mother was happy at first to see the old plastic towers again, touching them with the tenderness she once reserved for family photo albums. Then suddenly she admitted she remembered the counselor suggesting an online marketplace where special sets moved fast to buyers in the United States. My father sat near the carpet, proud at first that the elementary graduate had shown courage. Then suddenly, he realized his nostalgia had remote locked our past for years. I began tracking the counselor more seriously. Investigation energy shifted from emotion to strategy, receipts from the storage unit, photos from American suburb archives, even the childish signature under the brick. Flashbacks of my single visit to that children's center returned to stretch details. My brother teaching me how administrators sometimes build profit from charity language, how comparison culture between expensive gadgets and simple toys can hide real exploitation. My son opened bag number 6 that night. He was happy at first, saying the roof of the graduation city would now fit the timeline wall. Then suddenly he discovered another folded corner inside the manual, a printed message about the counselor becoming owner of several hospital activity clubs in Pakistan as well. The antagonist background was expanding beyond bricks. I arranged a visit to the center through an American friend, because stories sometimes need translators to confront two countries. The counselor was happy at first to see us on arrival, praising my son's building talent proudly, claiming he wanted to display the bigger city in the United States exhibition. Then suddenly my father placed the old therapy model on the table and asked why parts of it had been sold without permission. Conflict architecture erupted like a tower under stadium lighting. The administrator admitted comparison culture was his marketing strategy, that buyers loved evidence gifts, connected to emotional stories. Payoff hints began stacking toward the climax. My mother cried that grandparents had been only bags missing instructions. My son looked proud at first that he finished the roof while adults argued. Then suddenly he asked whether I would evict the counselor from the Pakistan clubs legally the way he evicted dreams from our carpet. Investigation receipts, legal threats, and emotional reversals were stretching the narrative toward a real pro-revenge ending. I told the counselor calmly that value is not price, and charity is not ownership. He was happy at first to promise apology publicly. Then suddenly he realized apologies sometimes require dismantling entire marketplaces. My father admitted he followed the Lego map to learn how to fight beyond bricks. We returned home carrying the bigger city set and the old model together, proud that elementary graduation had turned plastic into testimony. Yet the story flow demanded one more explosive movement: the confrontation in Pakistan courts, and the lesson dinner, where expensive gifts would feel suddenly small. The remaining bags on my carpet were waiting for part 6 of the narrative to show how a family rebuilds authority one ethical brick at a time. Returning from the counselor's center in the United States felt like stepping out of one model world into another, where the base plates were emotional instead of plastic. My son lined the finished graduation city beside my brother's old therapy towers, proud at first that both structures finally shared the same table. Then suddenly he asked why adults need courts to learn simple lessons children understand from manuals. According to the pacing, this was the section where strategy sharpens its edges. I contacted a lawyer in Pakistan who specialized in international charity fraud, sending him photos of folded pages, serial codes, and the custom minifigure scar. Flashbacks of my childhood humiliations stretched across the documents. My father once saying Lego was cheap parenting, my brother proving dreams sometimes hide in ordinary boxes. My mother was happy at first that I sought legal help, believing the antagonist would now face judges instead of carpets. Then suddenly she worried whether grandparents would be blamed publicly for buying evidence from a neighborhood sale in America. Investigation receipts from the storage unit continued expanding the narrative toward the 6,000-word climax. My son opened bag number 8, the final one, to keep pacing slow and cinematic. He was happy at first, fitting a small golden roof piece. Then suddenly, he noticed the manual message about the counselor becoming owner of several hospital clubs in Pakistan had matching dates with online archives. According to the story flow, the Lego gift was only a trigger, yet the trigger had rebuilt our family mirror across 2 countries. The lawyer advised confronting the hospital administrator linked to the clubs first, because antagonists sometimes multiply like extra bricks. My father admitted he met that administrator during the United States trip too, unaware how it would turn out suddenly for him. Emotional tension between loving parents and controlling marketplace language grew naturally at the dinner table. My mother cried again, saying expensive gadgets from other relatives now looked proud at first, then suddenly meaningless compared to plastic testimony. I arranged a meeting with the hospital administrator in Pakistan. He was happy at first to see an elementary graduate city and therapy towers together, praising nostalgia proudly. Then suddenly, my lawyer placed the investigation receipts on the table and asked why children models had been sold internationally. According to the pacing, this was the calm before explosive payoff. My son asked whether confronting that administrator would feel like evicting villains from their own company, the way other stories on Fahad Khan's channel portray pro-revenge. I realized comparison culture had remote locked our past for years. I told my parents the Lego map had led not only to truth, but to authority training they never planned to attend. The antagonist structure was now ready to collapse beyond bricks, and the next part of the narrative demanded a real courtroom climax in Pakistan where grandparents' ignorance would be tested suddenly against ethics. The meeting in Pakistan with the hospital administrator unfolded like the final minutes of a film, where the audience already knows the building will fall, only not from which side. My lawyer kept his voice soft, and I observed the room the way I once observed my parents. Living room on graduation, night silently powerful, emotionally controlled. The administrator was happy at first, repeating that the clubs were created only to help children heal through Lego therapy, proud that buyers in the United States loved contributing. Then suddenly, the lawyer asked him to explain the international transfers from the storage unit and the folded page signature that matched my brother's handwriting. According to the pacing of the story, this was the confrontation act where masks learn how heavy they are. My father sat beside me, embarrassed at first that his American nostalgia meetings were being read aloud. Then suddenly, he realized the administrator had convinced many grandparents like extra bags missing instructions. Flashbacks of my brother designing models to help children speak without speaking stretched across the table, proving the Lego gift was only a trigger, yet triggers sometimes testify better than witnesses. The administrator admitted happy at first that he purchased the original model from the counselor years ago, unaware it was tied to our family mirror. Then suddenly, he confessed selling parts of it internationally to fund programs in both countries. Emotional tension between loving parents and controlling marketplace language grew naturally in the room. My mother arrived after an hour, crying that expensive gadgets from other relatives now looked proud at first, then suddenly meaningless compared to plastic testimony. According to the pacing, this was the section where villains face daylight beyond bricks. The lawyer threatened a lawsuit to evict the administrator from the Pakistan clubs. Legally, the way pro-revenge stories portray office power shifts. The administrator was happy at first to promise apology publicly to grandparents and grandson. Then suddenly, he realized apologies sometimes require dismantling entire marketplaces. My father asked him directly why he used comparison culture as marketing strategy against cheap parents. Flashbacks to my childhood humiliation returned, my father once saying Lego was cheap parenting, my brother proving dreams hide in ordinary boxes. Investigation receipts from the storage unit continued expanding the narrative toward the 6,000-word climax. My son phoned me during that meeting, proud at first that adults were finally attending his authority training class. Then suddenly he asked whether the courtroom climax in Pakistan would feel like evicting villains from their own company, the way Fahed Khan's channel portrays corporate takedowns. I nodded though he could not see me. According to pacing, this was the calm before explosive payoff. The lawyer arranged filing in Pakistan courts the next day, insisting confronting the administrator first because antagonists multiply like extra bricks. The administrator admitted he met that counselor woman again during the United States trip too, unaware how it would turn out suddenly for him. Emotional reversal, stacked inside the corridor like towers missing roofs. My mother cried that grandparents had been only bags missing manuals. My father admitted following the Lego map to learn how to fight beyond bricks. The story demanded one more movement, the real courtroom in Pakistan, where ethics would remote lock profit language. I left the meeting carrying copies of receipts and the memory of my brother's towers, proud at first that truth finally had a base plate. Then suddenly I realized part 8 of the narrative would decide whether our family rebuilt authority or remained folded pages inside a toy. The courtroom in Pakistan smelled of polished wood and nervous perfume, nothing like the carpet of our living room, yet I could almost hear invisible Lego clicking beneath the benches. According to the pacing of the narrative, this was the moment where the trigger gift completed its long journey. My son sat beside my parents, proud at first to witness adults finally reading the kind of instructions no manual prints clearly. The administrator entered with a confident American smile, happy at first, telling the judge again that the hospital clubs were created only to heal children through play. Then suddenly my lawyer presented the investigation receipts from the storage unit in the United States, the photos of my brother's dusty towers, and the folded page signature enlarged on a screen like a testimony made of bricks. Emotional reversal moved across the room the way a tower chooses its direction while falling. My father admitted before the judge that grandparents had unknowingly funded a marketplace exploiting their own son's kindness, confessing he trusted nostalgia language during their trip to America. My mother was happy at first that he spoke truthfully. Then suddenly she cried that expensive gifts from other relatives now looked meaningless compared to ethics lessons plastic had taught our family. The judge asked the administrator directly why parts of the therapy model were sold internationally to buyers in the United States without permission. Conflict architecture reached its roof. The administrator was happy at first to promise apology publicly to grandparents and grandson, repeating that comparison culture was only marketing strategy. Then suddenly, he accepted stepping down as owner of the Pakistan clubs and returning profits to children programs ethically supervised. Payoff arrived like the final bag opening on graduation night. My son hugged my parents after the decision, proud at first that his gray city wall and my brother's towers now shared authority beyond bricks. Then suddenly, he whispered he wanted to donate new Lego sets to the hospital club in Pakistan to help other children speak without speaking. Resolution music filled the corridor. My father apologized to me for the third time in 2 days, admitting he once called Lego cheap parenting in my childhood and misunderstood its value. My mother promised not every present would ever be evidence again. According to the story flow, the Lego gift had been only a trigger, yet the trigger rebuilt our family mirror across two countries, American suburb past and Pakistan childhood present. We brought the administrator's written apology home and placed it inside the finished graduation city roof, proud at first that truth finally had a return address. Then suddenly, I realized elementary graduation had turned my son into an ethical builder of authority. My parents' learned manuals sometimes arrive years late in ordinary boxes from the United States. The comparison culture between expensive gadgets and simple toys collapsed like a remote locked yacht in other pro-revenge stories. My son asked me to write this narrative for Fahed Khan's channel so viewers stick raw from the first suspense minute and understand value versus price theme. I smiled, proud at first that our family model was complete. Then suddenly I understood completion is not the last brick. It is the daylight where builders continue living intelligently.